Hi, I'm Alex Silberbauer, and this is my Term 4 Film Studies task. I will be analyzing the film of Alien, and I am going to be breaking down the two genres of sci-fi and horror, and I will be applying them to this film to conclude that this film is an equal crossing between the two genres of sci-fi and horror. So, quickly, just some basic information on Alien. It was directed by Ridley Scott and released in 1979. The story follows a crew working on a tug spaceship called the Nostromo, just getting back from a space mission, and a deadly alien life force invades the ship just before they are about to return to Earth. And the crew of 7 are killed off one by one until the end. Only one person is remaining, and this is our protagonist, Ripley. So the film is renowned for its cultural commentary, its significance in cinematic history in general, and is a great example of a successful blend between the genre of sci-fi and the genre of horror. So I am going to break down both of these genres now and see if I can apply them to Alien successfully. Starting with horror. So what is horror? I have a quote from one of the most renowned science fiction writers of all time, Isaac Asimov, who describes the genre as a branch of literature which deals with the reaction of human beings to changes in science and technology. So we're going to see if this can be applied to this film. So, what are some of the characteristics of sci-fi films? I'm going to go through a few common plot points or prompts that are very common in sci-fi films. There are a ton, so I'm just going to name a few of them. So, alien invasion, time travel, space exploration, apocalyptic / post-apocalyptic settings, artificial intelligence, colonization, robots / androids, the near future, and first contact. Now, there are already more than one of these plot prompts in Alien. So it is set within a ship that is being invaded by a killer alien. It also involves space exploration, even though it's set within a sort of blue-collar environment, and it might not be as glamorous as what one would perceive that sort of sci-fi setting to be. It's still definitely a space exploration movie. One could also argue that the premise of the film is post-apocalyptic, since the setting, even though it is advanced in terms of technology, it looks very familiar and close to home. And it's not, again, it's not as glamorous as we would picture a future to be. And usually when it's post-apocalyptic, it is the future. But things haven't really gone that well for humanity. And there are definite signs of this in this film. It's a kind of grimy workplace, people doing a job that kind of resembles truck drivers, really. And yeah, not as exciting or as fun as we would picture the future to be. It's not like Back to the Future 2, where everything is amazing and flying and all these bright colours and fantastic fashion. It's pretty grim, to be honest. The technology is certainly advanced though. So again, dealing with the future. Also, speaking of advanced technology, there is also artificial intelligence in this film, as well as robots / androids. In the film, at one point, at around Act 2, the crew finds out that one of the crew members is in fact an android slash robot that has been just part of the crew in disguise the entire time. And also the ship itself could be considered a form of artificial intelligence, since it works off a voice activation slash answering call and answer system. And then, I mean, especially in that time, that was certainly considered artificial intelligence. So I'd say Alien's doing pretty well for itself, and this is definitely a film that involves people reacting to technological advances. So definitely going with what Asimov said, and I think Asimov knows sci-fi. There are also a lot of tropes and conventions that come into play when it comes to sci-fi movies. I'm also going to read out a few that correlate specifically with Alien, just to prove my point. Evil robots. The crew members, as mentioned before, discover that there is an android amongst them, and it's not exactly making life easier for everyone. In fact, it's quite a hindrance to their journey that they have found out that one of them is a robot, and it's also a bit of a betrayal. So, evil robot, to simplify, let's say that. There's also cryosleep to explain time in space. This is also involved in the movie. At one of the famous scenes at the end, a very satisfying scene where our protagonist Ripley finally, after killing the alien, curls up with her pet cat, who has also survived this horrible monster, and she goes into a deep cryosleep before her ship finally lands on Earth. Another one, life form gets into the ship and hides amongst the humans. And that's exactly what happens in Aliens. There's a killer alien that plants its seed inside people until one of the babies hatches inside of them and bursts out of them through their stomach. So it's not pretty. And if he's not doing that, he, she, the alien, if it is not doing that, it is killing and eating them. Which also goes with another one of these tropes, which is alien wants to eat humans. There we go, just explain that for you. Another very small one, alien wants to eat dogs or cats. There's a cat on the ship, the cat is in danger of being eaten by this alien. So again, doing pretty well. Another one, alien wants to lay eggs in humans. Check. I could honestly keep going, but because there are so many of these tropes and so many can be applied to this film, but we have limited time. So let's just say we're on the right track so far. Let's talk about aesthetics when it comes to sci-fi. So the best sci-fi films are known to have pretty good use of aesthetics and creative cinematography traits. They often use dramatic, translucent lighting. There's a lot of backlighting, and something that is very memorable in terms of sci-fi films is like a shallow depth use that kind of it's using the anamorphic lens that it brings shallow depth to the mise-en-scène, and then it also gives off these flares, these streaks of light across the screen. And obviously there are a lot of different styles that can be applied to sci-fi films when it comes to cinematography, but Alien does use this, for instance, in the third act, where it is just Ripley and it seems like everything is going fine, and there's these beautiful colors that are coming off through what she sees outside the spaceship as the stars and the moon, and it's still giving off sort of an eerie glow, so the audience almost knows that it's not over. And sure enough, we realize that the alien is still alive and is still in the ship with her. So I think that is a good enough dose of sci-fi aesthetics that can be used in Alien. Just one more thing, something that is often used in sci-fi to create sort of a paranoid feel are uses of sort of yellowy mustard colors to give off like a warm but kind of gritty tone, as well as deep green gels. And the deep green gels are used especially in the scenes where the alien is revealed, and also in the scenes where it is the crew members and they seem to be safe and they're just eating and talking and discussing things in their common room. So got the aesthetics down, I would say. Now, quickly in terms of the characters in sci-fi films, a lot of common characters that are found are robots or androids, already mentioned, extraterrestrial beings, definitely, and a protagonist that is usually an everyman type character, someone that the audience can relate to, because films that deal with all of these special extraterrestrial things can sometimes seem a little bit jarring unless we have a relatable character. And I've already talked about the fact that there's robots and androids. I've already talked about the fact that there is an extraterrestrial being, a alien. But yeah, with a focus on Ripley, she is definitely what makes the movie, because she is very logical thinking, very level-headed, and everyone around her is making ridiculous, insane decisions and are just kind of overcome by their own fears. And we can feel her frustration and we can relate to her so much. So we are surviving with her in this film, and that is very important. Also, she is played by the legendary Sigourney Weaver, who became very famous for being a sci-fi actress afterwards. There are many reviews and journals and articles that praise Alien for being one of the best sci-fi films of all time. So if we needed more proof, there it is. So moving on to horror. The horror genre, to define it, it's something that causes feelings of fear, dread, and disgust and terror in an audience. It creates an atmosphere that keeps the audience at the edge of their seats and scares them, really. The historical context when it comes to horror, the term horror comes from the French word horreur, which means to shudder or to bristle. It kind of has its roots in folk tales, historical events. It's a very universal genre, and every culture has its own kind of style of horror films. And if one were to think of sci-fi as a culture, then one could pretty easily blend it with horror. So these also elements of fear and terror come into play when one is making a horror film, because a true horror film deals with the supernatural. Supernatural can be very closely linked to extraterrestrial. So what do I mean by supernatural? It can be anything along the lines of evil, something evil, strange powers, creatures, the afterlife, witchcraft, or just anything unexplainable or diabolical that is at the center of the story. So, just in terms of its historical context and keeping that in mind, Alien definitely makes a viewer shudder and bristle, at the very least. This monstrous alien, it's terrifying to look at. Just the visuals, and the practical effects are used in such a way that it is a very, I mean, just on its own, it's absolutely terrifying. And yeah, look, I mean, it's scary. Look at it. It deals also with the possibility of death and pain. Very, very, very common in horror films. Every crew member except Ripley is killed off in a brutal and terrifying manner by this alien. Also, the supernatural, extraterrestrial being, the supernatural. Yeah, check. So it also deals with death in the way that, well, everyone except Ripley gets killed. And it deals with evil because, well, broadly speaking, this alien is evil because it's trying to kill the person that we care about, which is Ripley, and that is the protagonist. So we're going to be very broad in defining the term evil. It's evil. It also deals with powers because this alien clearly has powers. It can kill, overpower, devour, and lay eggs in people. So far, I think that we're doing pretty well when it comes to the horror genre. Another very interesting thing about horror, it is very malleable and it has many subgenres. So some of the common subgenres of horror, I'm not going to say sci-fi horror because that would be too easy, but you could have horror movies that involve comedy, body horror, folk history, found footage, gothic horror, natural elements, slasher, teen, psychological, and gore. So with Alien, we're already kind of convinced by the fact that horror is a malleable genre. So at face value, we can say that horror can be blended with sci-fi. It's possible. But also, if we're going to get nitpicky, some of the subgenres of horror can be applied to Alien. It has elements of the slasher film because it involves crew members getting killed off in very vicious, brutal, and terrifying ways. Also, in ways that include a lot of gore. So, two subgenres already. And yeah, since we've already kind of established that sci-fi can be blended, let's just say it's possible for Alien to maybe be a combination of the two. I'm also going to discuss a few more characteristics of horror before drawing up my final conclusion. So, horror, in terms of aesthetics, is very, very famous for its cinematography. The reason why horror has like its own style of cinematography is because it really needs the audience to move with the movie and move with the protagonist in a way that it feels like the audience is experiencing the same things as the protagonist. Our protagonist in this case is Ripley. These involve a lot of perspective shots, tracking shots, wide shots, to kind of like take in the entire atmosphere, close-ups also to reduce the atmosphere and the world to like one single emotion. And all of these are used to perfection in Alien. The audience is also affected on a sensory level because it's like a physical reaction to the movie. These shots make one affected because it truly does feel as though you are a part of the world. And the cinematography in Alien really recreates the on-screen experience for the audience, and it does this with a voyeuristic style. So Ridley Scott was very, very inspired by the cinematography of Hitchcock, who was known for having that voyeuristic feel in most of his films. And also, Hitchcock was known for popularizing the horror genre in Hollywood. He wasn't the first to do it, but he definitely made it famous. And it's pretty fitting that Ridley Scott was influenced by Hitchcock. So, the reason why this film is so thrilling in terms of the camera work is because all of the horrors being depicted on screen make you feel like you shouldn't be watching it. Again, with the voyeuristic feel. And this relates directly to horror because the reason why people love horror so much is it's like you're seeing these awful things and you know that you shouldn't be seeing them. So you're breaking the rules, and it's human nature to do bad things. We like doing bad things, therefore we like horror movies, therefore we like Alien. It's a very, very thrilling movie. And ultimately, a horror movies aesthetic and horror movies feel, tone, it needs to be scary. Is Alien scary? Yes, yes, it's very, very scary. So is Alien a horror film? Yes, yes it is. To conclude, Alien is a pretty perfect blend of sci-fi and horror. And it contains the qualities that really make horror and sci-fi films amazing. It takes just the best of both worlds and blends them together. It marries them in such an incredible way. And yeah, I think the only thing I have to say is thank you, Ridley Scott, and thank you, Sigourney Weaver, for creating this masterpiece and this masterclass on sci-fi and horror film. Thank you very much. That's me.